Here.
Councillor Fury,
Here.
and Councillor Norton.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. With that said, I will call this November 16th, 2020 meeting of the Whitefish City Council. Thank you, everyone, for joining us remotely via WebEx. We hope it's painless and seamless at the same time. With that said, we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And Craig, would you mind leading us this evening? Craig Workman.
Wow. All right. Sorry, that was difficult. I'm
All right. Thanks, Craig.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
Thank you very much, Craig. We'll move quickly on to our first item of business, which is a presentation from Whitefish Legacy Partners on a very exciting project that's been in the making now on the north end of Whitefish Lake, referred to as the Smith Lake easement. And I imagine Heidi, I'd like to introduce you. Heidi's the executive director with Whitefish Legacy Partners. I know she's joined tonight by Alan Myers-Davis, Margosha, as well as Mike Jopek, who I believe is still the chairman of the committee. With that said, Heidi, welcome.
Awesome. Thank you very much. As John said, my name's Heidi Van Everen. I'm the executive director of Whitefish Legacy Partners. I've been told my video is a little pixelated, but I don't know how to control it. So I hope you can hear me okay. And I have some slides to show that Michelle's going to help me with. And so then you'll hopefully not see pixelated me. But Whitefish Legacy Partners is a local nonprofit partnering with the city. And our goal is to accomplish the goals that are outlined in the 2004 Whitefish Area Neighborhood Plan. We are working together to impact the 13,000 acres of public land surrounding the Whitefish community. Our goal is to seek creative solutions to balance the Montana School Trust Lands mandate to generate revenue with the community's desire for conservation, recreation, and permanent public access surrounding Whitefish Lake. So I'm here this evening to present information regarding our collaborative project. We call it the Smith Lake Legacy. It's also known as the Smith Lake Public Rec Use Easement, or PRUE. And we are asking for your support to submit the application that was presented in your packet to the State Department of Natural Resources and Conservation Northwest Land Office. So I do have a few slides that are taken both from our 2020 annual community report, as well as our DNRC application and some maps of the Whitefish Trail. But I'd like to start with a bit of background, just so for folks that don't know how we've gotten to where we have today, they can understand the context of the project. Michelle, you're working, I'm seeing. Well, I'm gonna just carry on, and if some pretty pictures come up, that'll be great. So the Whitefish Neighborhood Plan, that's where I'd like to start. It's a 20-year land use plan that outlines innovative land management strategies. And the goal is to reduce uncertainty for the state, enhance income to the schools and universities, and to improve protection of the important community land surrounding Whitefish Lake. And our goal is to create permanency for future generations. So the plan envisions stacked uses, including timber management, conservation easements, conservation buyers, public recreation assets, commercial recreation, guiding, leases, licenses, and road access projects. So all the work that's under the Whitefish Neighborhood Plan, it's guided by the premise that conservation, recreation, and working forests are compatible, and ultimately that they can actually serve each other. And I think that we can all agree in our community, after the last 15 years of working in partnership with the state and the city and the local community, the Whitefish Neighborhood Plan truly is a successful model, both locally and statewide. So the vision that's outlined in the neighborhood plan, it's provided us an increased economic vitality for Whitefish, for the Flathead Valley, and the school trusts, impacting Montana schools and universities. So no maps. So Smith Lake is located at the head of Whitefish Lake. The Whitefish Trail map, maybe you can all visualize it, right? We all have seen it all over the place. We have existing trails in solid green, and we have proposed or future trails in dashed green lines. State trust lands are shown in blue, and then the forest lands are shown in dark green. And we have added this year, we added existing and future conservation in pink or purple, depending on your screen. But that's kind of a fun piece to add to the map to really show just how much of an impact we've had in our community. So currently the Whitefish Trail has been developed on the east side of Whitefish Lake. We've got Lion Mountain, Skiles, and the whole Beaver Lakes complex. Also on the west side of Whitefish Lake, we've got Haskell, and then our connections to Whitefish Mountain Resort, Spencer Mountain to the south. And these are all located on primarily to the west, and the south is all on state trust lands. To the east, Haskell is on Stoltz and with the conservation easement. But so we're really lucky to have these 13,000 acres around our community to be able to have the impact that we have. So Swift Creek and Smith Lake, oh, there we go. So maybe if you can go, just bring up the Whitefish Trail map. There you go. So Swift Creek and Smith Lake are at the north of, at the head of the lake at the north. And there's a 3.5 mile out and back trail there. Our proposal, if you go on to the next map, just sort of zooms in a little bit. Well, no, actually, yeah, go back. Thank you. Our proposal for the Smith Lake PRUE will surround Smith Lake. It'll offer new recreation opportunities, and it will provide important connections for the Whitefish Trail. The project is very similar to what we did in 2014 at Beaver Lakes. And the Smith Lake PRUE will ensure no development. It will provide permanent access, and it will allow the development of the Whitefish Trail, and it will add additional stacked loop trails in the area surrounding Smith Lake. The lands will continue to be owned and managed by the state, and it's our expectation that the state will retain management of commercial recreation in the area, including the winter grooming and snowmobile use, and they will also continue to manage the timber in the area as well. So if you could go on to the next slide, our application will kick off a long list of to-dos for both the city and legacy partners. And this list is not meant to be comprehensive or very specific, but more the idea of all the things we have to do. We're going to work together to secure the easement terms to benefit the public. Together, we'll manage the public access and the long-term maintenance, and legacy partners will continue to serve as the community transaction partner to uphold the Whitefish Neighborhood Plan. We will act as the project catalyst, and we will lead fundraising and capital campaign efforts required to fund the project. The capital campaign will also help to grow the existing Whitefish Trail Endowment Fund to make sure that that can support the new infrastructure that we're adding. So the big items that we'll work on diligently with the city and the DNRC include a preliminary appraisal, completing additional due diligence as outlined in the application that was in your packet. We will have to determine the project's final footprint. At this point, we just have an idea of where we want things to go, but we don't know exactly how much we can afford, so we don't have the final footprint yet. We have to negotiate all the terms. We have to complete a final appraisal. We have to complete a survey. And of course, Legacy Partners needs to initiate a $3 or $4 million capital campaign to fund the project. So we're a long way from the finish line, but this application will help us launch our commitment and initiate the work and pursue land board approval sometime later in 2021 is our goal. So as the Smith Lake public rec use progresses in 2021, we also would like to work with adjacent private landowners. And if you could forward to the next slide. So here's just sort of an outline showing the entire Smith Lake public rec use easement. And the next slide just sort of shows a zoom in, but this is important because I just wanted to touch on the trail as it grows out from the Swift Creek trailhead. Because in 2021, we need to work with adjacent private landowners to ensure that the connections heading both east and west from the Swift Creek trailhead are secured. We value the importance of ensuring these connections as we pursue the public rec easement around Smith Lake. As you can see on our map, we have alternate routes under consideration, and we have connecting routes TBD. So we've got some work to do both on the east and west of the Smith Lake area. We're working with the Foley family to connect from Smith Lake to the Forest Service lands in Hell Roaring. And we are also considering an alternate route to connect Beaver Lakes near Woods Lake to the Swift Creek area. So neither of these connections would be on state land, so they're not part of this proposal, but it's something that we will be working with in the city, with the city concurrently to this application. So I just wanted to mention that. Both connections are critical to the project's success, and when we talk about the Smith Lake legacy, that sort of encompasses this bigger lands on the adjacent private lands. So I think the next slide shows the Foley family has proposed a land exchange with the state, and it includes a donated trail easement on the 120 island parcel, we call it, that's near, that connects from Smith Lake to the Forest Service. That's a critical connection to be able to close the loop of the trail. There's another project that's happening in the southeast corner of the Smith Lake public rec use easement, and the proposed public rec use easement. And the state is working with 4 adjacent landowners to consider a road users agreement. So we need to make sure that all these projects are sort of moving forward and staying coordinated and ensuring that they are compatible with one another, and more importantly, also that they adhere to the Whitefish Neighborhood Plan. So I know that's a lot of information. I appreciate the opportunity that you've given us to present so that folks can have some background. I'm happy to answer questions, but I also would like Mike Jopek, our board chair, to also add some comments.
Why don't we go ahead and hear from Mike first, Heidi, and then we can ask the council if they have any comments. And just so I'm aware, you do need some formal motion from the council tonight approving an application of the Smith Lake PRUE to the DNRC Northwestern Land Office. Is that correct?
Yes, we did have council consider this back in 2017 prior to the MIPA, but this is the formal application to take action under that environmental assessment.
Okay, thanks. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mike Jopek. I live in the Blanchard Lake area on the fishing access road. I thank you for the opportunity to talk and look forward to working with you, Mr. Mayor, and the councilors on moving this project forward. I just wanted to iterate that we have a very strong board at Whitefish Legacy Partners. It's comprised of Fred Jones, Julie Baldridge, Reed Sabin, Leslie Hunt, Ed Leeser, Becky Smith-Powell, Hank Rickliffs, and Diane Conradri. And we really couldn't do much of this work without our fine staff, Heidi Van Ebren, Alan Myers-Davis, and Margosha Jedkowski. The Smith Lake project is consistent with the project's environmental assessment that was completed by the state of Montana in January of 2019. And it is also consistent with the goals outlined in the Whitefish Neighborhood Plan adopted in 2004 by the Flathead County, the City of Whitefish, and the State of Montana. The Smith Lake Public Recreation Easement will protect highly developable lands and will provide a wonderful community asset in perpetuity at the head of Whitefish Lake. The project will provide the critical link for the Whitefish Trail, our community's recreational trail system, your public easement, connecting these lands, the state trust lands, to the adjacent National Forest lands. The project promises to sustain local timber jobs, conserve key habitat and scenery, defend wildlife-prone areas, guaranteed public access and high-quality recreation, and protect the city's water supply. To date, Whitefish Legacy Partner has secured over $12 million to Montana schools through various conservation and recreational projects. The Beaver Lake Conservation alone, which Heidi referenced earlier, generates $300,000 in annual interest for public schools. The Smith Lake project will contribute several million dollars more to schools in Montana, and Montana has kept timber jobs open while contributing millions more in timber revenue to the trust. This application to the state allows for the required time for us to determine the cost via market analysis, consider other trail possibilities, refine the project's footprint, and ensure implementation of the project is aligned with the community goals. We value how the 20-year-old Whitefish Neighborhood Plan provides the framework for this project and gives us the opportunity to engage with neighboring conservation buyers that are willing to assist in the protection of the entire area. We'll be back before the council again sometime in 2021 seeking final approval of the easement document and support to present to the State of Montana Land Board. We thank you very much for embracing this community-driven partnerships. Together, we create celebrated models for the state. We could not do this work without a strong commitment from the people of Whitefish. They truly are behind us. We ask for your unanimous approval to submit the application as presented in your packet to the State of Montana. We thank you for your vision to our town, and we happily stand for questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mike. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to the council to see if there's any questions for Heidi, Mike, or Legacy Partners representatives. And we'll start with Andy. Andy, any questions this evening?
I don't have any questions, actually. I got to spend about a half hour on the phone with Heidi the other day and got most of my questions answered at that point, so that was great. And I just wish us all success as we move forward with this project. I think it's super important for the community, certainly super important for Whitefish Legacy Partners, and very important for overall conservation in our community. So thanks.
Thanks, Andy. Ben, Darius.
Yeah, I just want to say I think we're incredibly lucky to have folks in our community who are going after projects like this. And it's one of the things that makes this a wonderful place to live. So it has my full support, and thank you for all the work you've done for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Frank.
Nothing but to echo what Ben and Andy have said. This is a great thing. I'm really glad to see it come through.
Great. Thanks, Frank. Rebecca.
No questions, but again, big thank you to all of you guys for making this happen. It gets better and better every year, and I really appreciate your diligence on making the connectivity be there for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rebecca. Ryan.
Has my full support. Other than that, nothing from me.
Thanks very much. And finally, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi and Mike and everybody who's been working on this. And we do definitely appreciate your hard work, and the public appreciates it more than you'll ever know. And they probably don't know half of what you've done. With that said, now that this map is out there showing these trails that essentially close the loop, what is our timeline on actually making that happen? Just so we have an idea.
You know, it's all going to revolve around approval and funding. We have a timeline that we've set out. We would like, if we're successful, we would like to be going to the land board this time next year. And we hope that we can, we're hoping to negotiate terms for payment for over 5 years, and we hope to have a construction plan during those same 5 years. We still have a lot of work to do. You know, we've done a lot, but to get from the Big Mountain Trailhead, you know, basically to North Beaver, you know, we have some trails at the Swift Creek area, but they're, you know, it's just sort of a small bit. But if we're lucky, we can, you know, construction will last, you know, I'm optimistic always. So I say 5 years, you know, it may be more like 6 or 8 years. And it's all going to be dependent on grants and our capital campaign success. And,
Okay.
and approval. So we need approval.
Thanks, Heidi. I just wanted to make sure that people understand that this is not done yet, that because you can see the lines on the map, that those trails don't actually exist, and there's still a lot of work to be done in the end.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think we've been extremely lucky with raising funds to support the project, both through grants and private philanthropy, and we hope that that will be no different as we move forward with this. And we hope that we get the support from the state as well to allow us, you know, to do this project and move it forward. But there's a lot of work still to do. So thank you for bringing that point out.
Great. And thank you, Heidi. Like I said, we certainly appreciate all the hard work you all do. Thank you.
Awesome.
But before I entertain a motion, Heidi, speaking of approvals, with the change in composition of the land board just around the corner, and literally I don't think there'll be one member on that land board that has the institutional knowledge of what we've accomplished in partnership with the state. And I think it would be important, I'm sure you've already thought about this, to schedule some time with the land board earlier in the year, just so they have some background information and a little bit of the history, and we can kind of grease the skids and, you know, formulate a new partnership with what's entirely going to be a new land board and new governor, obviously. And I'd be happy to help with that as I have in the past, or other members of the council as well. So just keep us appraised on what you need, and I'll be happy to rally back over to Helena.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. You know, we really have, I mean, I think, you know, we've worked with Governor Bullock when he was the Attorney General, you know, 12 years ago. And, you know, there's a lot of time and energy was put into working with the existing land board to make sure that they did understand all the intricacies. I think, you know, we're lucky, at least at this point, that we've had the success and, you know, come as far as we have with our partnership with the DNRC, because I really think they recognize, you know, how much revenue we can generate on behalf of the schools. And so I think we have, you know, good, solid background, but it's going to take a lot of work to bring people up to speed. So thanks for that offer. We will be taking you up on it.
You bet. Thanks, Heidi. Anything further from you, Heidi, tonight?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Dana, anything on your end to add? Okay, I will need a motion from the council authorizing Whitefish Legacy Partners to submit an application to Smith Lake PRUE to the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation Northwestern Land Office. And you can simply say, so moved.
So moved.
And I think that was Steve's motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? Michelle, roll call, please.
Counselor Quinnell,
In favor.
Counselor Sweeney,
In favor.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Hennon,
Aye.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
and Counselor Norton.
In favor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Council, and thanks, Legacy Partners, for your work this evening. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
We're going to turn it over to communications from the public. It's item 4 on our agenda this evening. Michelle is going to coordinate public comment tonight. And Michelle, it's all yours.
Okay, for those of you who are attending, if you'd like to speak during public or communications from the public, go ahead to the right of your screen to the participants page or list and find your name. Right click and hit the hand icon, and I'll go down the list. For those of you who are attending by phone, please hit *3 on your phone pad, and that will also raise your hand. When you're done speaking, please lower your hand the same way that you raised your hand. And right now, I'll go down the line, and Chris Schustrom, you have the floor. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry, I started talking. I wanted to let everyone know that we'll be hanging the decorations this coming Sunday, November 22nd, and spreading winter cheer as we could all use it in this odd year. And we're excited. We're going to be hanging the final 2 light strings over Central Avenue north of the O'Shaughnessy Center at the mid-block there, and also at Depot Street to sort of celebrate the completion of the Depot Park plan, in addition to hanging all of the other great decorations around town. So if you can make it, or anyone you know can make it, volunteers should meet at the corner of 3rd Street and Central Avenue at 8 a.m. on Sunday, and dress accordingly for the weather. So thanks.
Thanks, Chris, once again.
And Alan Myers-Davis, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, everybody. My name's Alan Myers-Davis. I'm at 2045 Line Mountain Loop Road. Not sure if I need to say that, but I'm Director of Development at Whitefish Legacy Partners, and would like to comment on our joint grant application that is agenda item number 7 under updates from the Public Works Department. We are thankful and excited to have the opportunity to partner with the city and Stumptown Art Studio on a grant application to the Montana Office of Tourism. Our application, entitled Improving Outdoor Recreation Experiences in Whitefish, will be submitted by the November 30th deadline, and we are gathering letters of support from over 10 community partners and local businesses. Whitefish Legacy Partners has won and successfully managed 2 previous grants from the Office of Tourism, totaling $95,000 to support and promote the Whitefish Trail. We attribute this success to our solid partnerships and hope City Council can see the benefits of the collaboration outlined in the proposed grant. Of the $35,000 application, approximately $10,000 will support adding the Whitefish Trail to the city's vehicular wayfinding signs, and approximately $25,000 will support Stumptown Art Studio's proposed art exhibit in the new pedestrian underpass. The grants match, including a $2,500 grant from Whitefish CVB, is already secured, requiring no additional monetary contributions from the city. This project will improve user experience by further integrating the city's bike and pedestrian paths with the Whitefish Trail. A trail user will be able to navigate easily from the center of town to our local conservation lands and enjoy inspiring and community-driven artwork along the way. Our local outdoor recreation amenities not only generate tourism dollars for our community, but more importantly, they make Whitefish a vibrant and special place to call home. Public Works Director Craig Workman will provide additional details on the grant, and we hope you will support our collaborative application to leverage important state funding for our community. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate your comments tonight.
Okay, William Hagan, you're next. If you like, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Took me a bit. Thanks for your patience. My name is Will Hagan, 384 Delray, Whitefish, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my wife, Lindsay Foley, as well as on behalf of Bill and Carol Foley and their kids, Rob and Courtney, who mow all of them land out here at the north end of the of Whitefish Lake, very close to the project that Heidi was speaking about prior to the public comment. Myself and the Foley family are in strong support of the Whitefish Legacy Partners application for the Smith Lake Public Recreation Use Easement. As neighbors to this project and neighbors to the existing trail, it's important to myself and the Foleys to it's critical to preserve these open space view corridors. Important to preserve all of this land in a way that expands opportunities for the public to utilize these areas, and for to protect some of the wildlife corridors. Really, for all of the reasons that Heidi also expressed. We know that the Whitefish Legacy Partners in the city of the Whitefish have a history of working well together to achieve great things. The Whitefish Trail is very close to my heart, and it's incredible what the Whitefish Legacy Partners and the city have accomplished so far. Part of the reason we're speaking in support of this is, well, we're right here within half mile to a mile of this project, but as Heidi had briefly mentioned, the Foleys have a project that they're working on right now, a land exchange that really dovetails and supplements with the Smith Lake public rec use easement, attempting to exchange land. If you remember the map shown on page 7 of Heidi's chart, there's a 160-acre parcel that's owned by the Foleys that is fairly important to the connectivity for the Whitefish Legacy Partners Trail. Trying to exchange some land up in that area, including that 160 acres, for some land that's immediately adjacent to the Foley land. It's along Del Rey. It's land that people pass by on the way to the Smith Creek trailhead. So it's important for us to that the Whitefish Legacy Partners and the city of Whitefish is successful in this project. In part to there's a deep love for this area. The Foleys have lived out here for quite some time now, and appreciate the view corridors that exist and the buffers from development that are in place. During the meetings, some of the meetings with the DNRC that we've had, they made it clear that they're looking at utilizing all of these properties, including the property adjacent to the Foley property that they want to exchange, to the highest and best use, which is what they're charged with. But during the conversations, they made it clear that they were going to be looking at potentially selling this land to developers. They even mentioned potential of developing some of these properties commercially, which I think they'll hit some other roadblocks if they try to do that. But they've made it clear that they want to utilize this property. That I don't, and the Foleys don't think that it's necessarily in the best interest of the community and certainly ourselves. So so we're just hoping that the Whitefish Legacy Partners can be successful in their project, and we're of course hoping for success with our own project, which dovetails with their project and supports it, so that we can preserve this land for future generations, future users, and protect the watershed and protect all of the wildlife corridors that are in place. So appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thank you, William, and please extend our hello to the Foley family if you don't mind.
I will. Thank you.
And yours is like Michelle.
And Melanie Drown, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time to listen to us. So I'm with Stumptown Art Studio, and I just wanted to briefly say that we are very, very excited and honored to be a part of the Baker Street Underpass Public Art Installation Project. It's in its early infancy, but we are applying jointly with Whitefish Legacy Partners for a grant through the Montana tourism industry and asking for support from the Whitefish City to be a co-applicant in our grant application. And if we can answer any questions at all, we would love to do that.
Great. Thanks, Melanie. If we have any questions later in the meeting when we take this up under item 7, we'll certainly circle back with you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Michelle?
And I'm not seeing any other comments.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll turn it back to the council. I'm just curious if there are any volunteer board reports from the city council, and you can just raise your hand if you do have a board report to share this evening. And I'm not seeing any, which will bring us quickly to item.
Oh.
Rebecca?
Well, I just wanted to tell you that we did meet with the Strategic Housing Board last week. I think it was last week. Sorry, you guys. We're just still revising, going through the review of the Legacy Homes project and tweaking a few things, and we'll be seeing that as the council later on. Is there anything else you can think of, Dana? That's probably all.
We canceled our December meeting to allow staff time to prepare for the accessory dwelling unit discussion, but yeah, so Rebecca's right. The WR4 changes are going to the planning board this week.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Not seeing additional board reports. We'll move on to item 5, which is our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the minutes from October 26th, our special session on November 2nd, or our regular meeting on November 2nd, or can I have a motion for approval? And this will include resolution 5D on the packet. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thanks, Rebecca. Now seconded by Councillor Sweeney. Michelle, roll call, please.
Councillor Quinnell?
In favor.
Councillor Sweeney?
In favor.
Councillor Davis?
In favor.
Councillor Hennon?
Aye.
Councillor Fury?
In favor.
And Councillor Norton?
In favor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks for the comments tonight from the public. We do not have any public hearings scheduled, so we'll move on to item 7, which is communications from our Public Works Director, Craig Workman. You have item 7A on the agenda, which is consideration to work with the Stumptown Art Studio and Whitefish Legacy Partners to co-sponsor an application for the 2021 Tourism Grant, and you just received comments in support of this application from the public. And I will turn this over to Craig. Good evening, Craig.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council again. So yeah, this item is under the Public Works Director, but it's clearly, as I think you'll find, involved several members of the Parks and Rec Department, and eventually will involve members of the Finance Department as well as a collaborative effort between WLP and the Stumptown Art Studio. So as Alan kind of alluded to earlier, the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development does offer a tourism grant on an annual basis to projects that strengthen Montana's economy. Typically, those projects have to show that they enhance tourism and recreation in the state of Montana. Funds are awarded annually, and the 2021 application cycle is open through the end of this month. So as you all know, the city has been working for the past year on the final design and construction of the Baker Avenue underpass. While construction is nearly complete, one of the elements that has not been decided is the public art component of this project. Also on a related front, WLP has successfully won and managed 2 separate tourism grants used to help develop the Whitefish Trail and improve recreational wayfinding along the city's bike and ped paths. The city approached Stumptown Art Studio earlier this year to begin working on concepts for the public art display of the Baker Avenue underpass. Some of these ideas were discussed real briefly with council at work sessions earlier this year, but they were very general in nature, and there have not been any budget allocations committed to this aspect of the project. Staff does feel strongly that a well-designed artistic component within the tunnel will help promote the project and reduce the likelihood of graffiti on the new walls. The Stumptown Art Studio created a committee earlier this year to work on various design concepts for the tunnel walls. The committee focused their efforts on designs that could be enhanced by the tunable LED lighting, the upgrade that we did to the LED lighting that was incorporated into the tunnel design. The committee's been meeting with staff and our design engineer from WGM over the past few months, and the recommended concept is called Reflections of Whitefish. There's information in your council packet about this design, which is really pretty cool. It's going to incorporate durable glass panels through the tunnel, which will represent geographical features of the Flathead Valley. One side of the tunnel will be dedicated to land and mountains and topography, and the other side will be dedicated to lakes, rivers, and streams. Meanwhile, Legacy Partners has been working with the city to team up on another round of wayfinding improvements. This project will focus on updating the existing downtown wayfinding signs to include the Whitefish Trail and help further integrate the city's bike and ped paths with the expansive Whitefish Trail network on lands that surround town. Realizing the city can only co-sponsor one grant application per cycle, the Art Studio and WLP have recently teamed up on these projects and seek the city's partnership to apply for a grant application. The project is a working title of Improving Outdoor Recreation Experiences in Whitefish. It will help locals and visitors locate the Whitefish Trail via updated vehicular signs, navigate bike and pedestrian paths with new trailside directional signs, and enjoy inspiring community-driven artwork along the way. The tourism grant is funded by the 4% lodging facility use tax, also known as the bed tax. Of the collected bed tax distributed to the Office of Tourism and Business Development, about $750,000 is awarded annually through grants, which fund 2/3 of eligible project expenses. The estimated cost of the public art project is $39,000. This translates to a grant request of $26,000. The remaining $13,000 would be a split between the city and the studio. And it's been discussed that the city could cover our contribution by painting a base coat on the tunnel of the walls, and ceiling. Right now, it's basically just a blank concrete tunnel, and so there'll obviously need to be a primer coat applied before any of the artwork can be proceeded with. The estimated cost of the wayfinding project is $16,000, and the grant request would be for $10,500. This leaves a required match of $5,500, which would be covered by a $2,500 grant from the Whitefish CVB, and Alan alluded to the fact that that's already been secured. And I believe there will be a cash match for the city. Our original plan was to cover our match through labor and equipment that we would provide for the installation of signs. But the tourism grant no longer accepts in-kind labor, so we will come up with a cash match. We're thinking that we could budget for that next fiscal year by just covering a portion of the signs and hardware and posts and perhaps some of the graphic design work. The city's equipment and labor will still be used to install the signs, and we'll include that in the grant, which will only strengthen the application. So total costs for the projects add up to $55,000 with a $36,500 ask for the grant. So in summary, diverse recreational experiences make Whitefish an amazing tourism destination, as well as a vibrant local community to live and raise a family. The project will add depth to these experiences while expanding existing community partnerships through the collaboration between WLP, Stumptown Art Studio, and the city. It is the recommendation of staff that the city work with the Stumptown Art Studio and Whitefish Legacy Partners to co-sponsor an application for the 2021 tourism grant. And with that, I am more than happy to answer questions, and there may be others here that are more qualified to answer those questions.
Great, thanks very much, Craig. I'll remind the council we do have Melanie still on the call, as well as Alan from Legacy Partners. And We will start with any questions from the council. Andy, any questions tonight on this item?
No questions. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ben?
Thank you.
Frank?
No questions, thanks.
Thank you, Frank. Rebecca?
My only concern, I guess, is how to stop vandalism. I don't know if there's a way to construct things to make sure that they don't get vandalized, but that's my only long-term concern.
Ryan?
We do.
Sorry, Greg.
I'll just mention that we did specify an anti-graffiti coating that will go on all of the rock wing walls throughout the project. We specifically are not applying that inside the tunnel just because it'll complicate matters when we go to paint it in the future. But there will be an anti-graffiti component on the portions of the project that are not going to have a public art concept. We will also have an intricate lighting design that's being employed. So it will be a well-lit project, and there will be cameras connected wirelessly to the city's network. So we'll have real-time monitoring of the area.
And if I could just put in my 2 cents, if that's okay. We feel that the inclusion of a really kick-butt piece of art inside that tunnel will discourage vandalism. So we did, years ago, we did these tiles on the bridge that's going over the river behind Don K. I can't think of the name right now, but we were really worried that those tiles would get defaced and painted over, and nobody has touched those. And then we did the windows on Whitefish murals, and also we were really worried about those. People tend to really respect great art, and so I think that's part of the reason why the city came to us asking for a public art installation inside the tunnel, because people tend to respect the contribution from a community into public art. So with that said, the glass panels that we are planning to build will be very, very durable. And we are going to put a coating over the paint that is anti-graffiti so it can be cleaned up nicely. And then we're also building a maintenance fund so that if there's any damage, we can come back and fix it.
Great. Thanks, Melanie. Appreciate your comments. And Ryan?
Nothing for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Steve?
Yeah, my question was just about what is a durable glass panel? How durable is it? And what happens if somehow it gets broken? So I guess that's maybe for you, Melanie.
Sure. So we are going to be working with Bullseye, which is a glass factory in Portland where we get all of our glass. So they are going to come up with actually a firing program for us for our glass panels. It's all about making sure that the glass can handle the extreme temperature changes. And so I think more than anything, it's going to be weather rather than vandalism. That's going to be a problem. But they have they've designed some programs and some glass that are very, very durable. So we will work with them and build this to the best of our abilities. And then I believe there's going to be several security cameras installed within the tunnel. I mean, not that that's going to prevent vandalism, but I think that and all of the lighting that is going to be in place is really going to be a detractant from people that just want to do damage.
And we can do all that for $13,000? Or is some of the tourism grant money going towards those panels as well?
Yeah, tourism grant money will go towards that. The total cost for the art installation is $39,000.
Okay.
So 26,000 of the 36,000 will go towards the art project.
Okay.
Michelle, I don't know if it's possible for me to share content here, but I can throw up some pictures of the glass panel concept if people want to see it.
You have the ball.
Okay. So just real quickly, this is the Reflections of Whitefish concept that was put together by the folks at the art studio. Here's kind of what I don't know exactly how many panels we're talking about, but one side of the tunnel would be, topographical features and sort of land features of the valley, and then the other side would be water features. There's a total of 12 tunnel sections as you go through the tunnel. So we'd have to determine how many panels, but panels would look, I don't know if they look exactly like this, but this kind of gives you an idea of, kind of how thick they would be. And Melanie, feel free to tell me if I'm putting my foot in my mouth, but, obviously they're going to be thick and they'll be fired in a kiln. And so the intention is that it's going to take a whole lot of work to try and break one of these. But they can be cast and fired with, different, kind of patterns and textures.
And if I can chime in, my name is Charity and I'm with the Stumptown Art Studio, and I'm on the team of artists that came up with this design. The glass fused panels are really thick. It's not like a regular window. You would have to go after it with a sledgehammer to get it to break up. So they'll be really sturdy.
Thank you. That's all I have, John.
Thanks, Steve. With that said, we will need a motion recommending the City Council to approve city staff to work with the Stumptown Art Studio and Whitefish Legacy Partners to co-sponsor an application for the 2021 tourism grant. Have a motion, please.
Moved.
Mr. Mayor, I will so move.
Thank you, Frank. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, I heard Andy first, seconded by Councilor Fury. Further discussion from the council? Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell,
In favor.
Councilor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councilor Davis,
In favor.
Councilor Pennon,
Aye.
Councilor Fury,
In favor.
and Councilor Norton.
In favor, and I think it looks really pretty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, and thank you, Charity, Melanie, Greg, and Alan for bringing this project forward for us. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
We will move on to item 8 of our agenda, which is communications from Dana Smith, our city manager. You have Dana's written report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana on her reports? Not hearing any. Dana, any other items you'd like to report on?
Yes, I do have a couple. The first one is just so that you're aware, at your next meeting, I hope to have in front of you a memorandum of understanding with Flathead County, City of Columbia Falls, and the City of Kalispell regarding the Flathead Emergency Communications Center. So during the election, there was a ballot measure that was passed by the county voters to implement a special district to fund the Flathead Emergency Communications Center. And the intent behind that was that the city will no longer make payment to the county for those services, but instead they will levy that county-wide. And in doing so, we're also transferring the management of staff, the employment of staff from a board, the FECC board, to the county. So we're just waiting on a few items from the county to see, to make sure that City of Columbia Falls is okay with the way that it's written. And so hopefully we'll have that at your next meeting, because the intent is that the transfer of management will occur on January 1st of this coming year. The other item I want to update you on is we are working on our garbage contract. But in also doing so with that, we are looking into the animal resistant containers. We know that, there has been the bear that was sadly killed and had babies in town. That's brought forward a lot of the comments that we've received about bears. It happens every fall and every spring. They come out and get into trash. We are facing some logistical issues when it comes to our 300-gallon containers, because there are no 300-gallon containers on the market. But I have, and I'm waiting on FWP to hopefully schedule a meeting with the city and Republic to look at, is there a way to do 90 or 96-gallon containers for those homes that right now have a 300-gallon container in the alley, and maybe focus just on the river corridor instead of having to look all over the entire city. I think we could also look at potentially lessening the burden of the cost of those containers, but I want to get direction from FWP if they believe the bears will move further in than, maybe 3 to 4 blocks off the river if there's no garbage within those first 4 blocks. So that's in progress. And then at the next meeting, we hope to have a draft RFP for you regarding recycling for our central recycling site, because as you know, we've deeded that property over to the Housing Authority, and as they kick off the snow lot project, we do need to find a new location. And because the ask from Republic for servicing that site was so high price-wise, and because they do not have exclusive service use, exclusive, I guess they aren't exclusive to serving our area when it comes to recycling, like they are garbage, we felt that it'd be appropriate to put on RFP, because there are other recycling vendors in the county. So those are the 2 non-COVID related updates I have. I will wait for my COVID updates with your item down below, if that's okay.
Yes, that's great, Dana. Thanks very much for the updates. We'll move on to item 9, which is communications from us. And we'll start with item 9A, which is we made all the appointments to boards earlier this evening during our work session. I'll just go through those real quickly for the public in attendance tonight. We reappointed Toby Scott Giles and Allison Linville to the planning board. All 3 were incumbents. We reappointed Ben Cavan and Peggy Bramer to the Whitefish Lakeshore Protection Committee, both incumbents, as well as Doug Pepmeyer and Ian Hassan to the Board of Adjustments, again, both incumbents. So congrats to those individuals again. And with that, we'll move to item 9B, which is our open-ended placeholder for COVID-19 discussions. I do know that, Dana, unless you had anything to add, I'll let you start, please. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. I have 3 things that I would like to bring to your attention. First is I've talked to both the City of Kalispell and the Count and the City of Columbia Falls, and they're actually talking to their council tonight, both of them. But if the council wants a seat on the health board, the county has offered us a seat. We've been trying to push through negotiations, a different board makeup, but with 2 members coming up for reappointment after December 31st, I think that time is maybe of the essence here. And it doesn't mean that we can't renegotiate the interlocal agreement at a later date. Funding wise, there has been a historical, the county has been levying the 6 mills or however many mills it is for the entire county, including Kalispell. I don't believe that we're going to have an issue with having to set aside a certain number of mills every year. But you would also have the authority to review the budget that's prepared by the health department as well as a council. And so I would like to hear from the council if you'd like me to pursue getting us a seat on the board as soon as possible. I will reach out to both Columbia Falls and Kalispell, and I believe Kalispell will be willing to drop their request to try to add more city-appointed positions than county commissioner-appointed positions, just to get Whitefish on, which we were offered by the county. So that should be still on the table for us to add our one position. In that essence, I guess, are you guys interested with me moving forward with getting us a seat on the board, basically starting January 1? And I would recommend it's an elected official that's appointed based on the current makeup of the board.
I think it's imperative and time is of the essence, so I would certainly support that, Dana, and I would entertain head nods or comments from the council.
I would very much support it. I think we need it to get through COVID, and there's just other issues too that I think we would benefit from having representation. But in Columbia Falls, we'll do the same, Dana?
So Columbia Falls is not a second-class city yet. They assume they will be with the census. It's not, the Montana code doesn't preclude them from adding right now, and the county said it's okay. But Susan wasn't for sure if they wanted to start now or if they wanted to wait. I think they're a little concerned about the politics that are going on with the health board. But I think you brought up a really good point, Rebecca, that in a time when it's not a pandemic, it's really important to have city representation on the health board because they're the ones that are approving septic permits. And so I think that that's something we need to be aware of, that right now it's COVID focused, but there are other benefits to having a representative on that board.
Very, very much so, yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca. I saw Steve, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Dana, I got a little confused by your discussion of the 6 mil levy. We don't have to pay anything to be on the board, do we?
So interesting. Yes, technically we do, but the county's been levying it the entire time on our behalf. And so they have already had that in place, and the MOU states that that's how it will be done. So it will not be our mills. It won't count against our allowed mills is the intent. It's as clear as mud because, yeah.
So it's not going to cost us anything additionally.
Correct. There's no additional costs coming from the city. There you go. Yep. Or the taxpayers to be a part of it. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay. All right, I'll move forward with that. I am going to try so hard right now to share the, you guys are getting the first view of the new task force video, and then I'll give you a quick update about that. Fingers crossed I can do this because it's a video, so it takes a little bit more time to load.
A little bit more bandwidth.
Yeah, we'll see if it works. I do have a lower quality. Can you guys at least see the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, let's try now.
Hi, I'm Nick Columbus.
I'm Dana Smith.
I'm Pat Murray.
I'm Scott Larkin.
I'm Gail Goodwin.
I'm John Koblish. I'm a family physician here in Whitefish.
I'm a student.
And I'm a teacher.
I work for Coffee Traders.
I'm a nurse in the ER at North Valley Hospital.
I love Whitefish because I have great friends and awesome teachers.
Because we celebrate the dignity, diversity, and inclusion of all.
Because it is my home.
Because of the people who live here.
Because I love to play outside.
Because my office is ski in, ski out.
We all love our town, and we want to keep it safe.
But that can only happen if we all work together.
The reality is,
Whitefish is experiencing its highest number of COVID-19 cases ever.
And we need to work harder to keep each other healthy.
And to keep our hospitals safe.
So we can keep our small businesses thriving.
And keep our doors open.
And to keep our guest lodges in business.
And to keep old timers safe.
We all need to be a friend of the fish.
This means wearing a mask,
physical distancing,
limiting exposure to other people, and washing our hands a lot.
Be a friend of the fish, so we can keep serving our patrons.
So we can drink coffee together again. So I can go to school.
So we can keep our vulnerable healthy. So our hospitals are not overwhelmed.
So we can save lives. Check out whitefishcovidcares.com to learn more. We can do this, Whitefish.
Okay, well, I hope did that work? Did you guys all get to see it?
Excellent.
Awesome. Okay. So that
I was
is
really happy to see Pat Murray in there.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really pleased with it. It's going to start being distributed tomorrow. You guys got the sneak peek because it was just wrapped up this evening, like while we were meeting in the work session. The task force is moving forward with a lot of the messaging. Soon you're going to see faces on banners, probably within 2 to 3 weeks, at least before ski season starts. Banners along Central Avenue and then around downtown that are going to be hung off of our light posts, like the ones that we had for graduation with the seniors. And it's going to have a picture of St. John, mayor of the Fish, and it's going to say, you know, wear a mask or mask up to keep our economy running or going, or I can't remember the exact language, and then we'll have a nurse with a similar statement, you know, to keep our hospitals open so they could save lives. So you're going to see those banners. We've coordinated with Chris Schustrom to make sure that we can have the banners and the Christmas decorations as needed. So we appreciate that work through. So you're going to see those new visuals as well. We have an ad going on the snow bus that is going to be approved and to them by tomorrow. So, you know, we're really working forward with looking forward to all of these new assets is what we're calling them. We have new videos planned coming up. One will be with kids because that little sweetheart on that video, that really touches people. So we're going to do one with kids. We're going to do one with young business owners. And then we have a couple more videos planned as well. We're going to actually pay to promote these on Facebook. I received confirmation that all of it's CARES eligible, the entire program. One of the things we're trying to do is buy takeout boxes with stickers and or branding on them for our restaurants, pushing people to whitefishcovidcares.com, and that was approved by the state. So it supports our restaurants that we know are still struggling. So from a task force standpoint, I think that's the update right now. John, did I miss anything on the task force side? Okay.
I don't think so. It was a good summary.
And then on so we have our Whitefish COVID task force, but the health board has created a task force and has invited myself and the other city managers to it to just listen on. And I'd just like to share some of the challenges that I think they're facing. You've heard obviously in the news that the commissioners denied overtime for their salaried exempt individuals, but they also denied a mobile unit for providing vaccines. So right now, you know, assuming all goes well, vaccines will be in the Valley mid-December, early January. They're phasing in that vaccine process though, and so it's going to go to healthcare workers, long-term care facilities first, then those over 65 and children under 5, I think is what they'd said, 5 and under maybe, and pregnant, women that are pregnant. And so they were looking at this van to try to get to everybody. We kind of talked about it because the commissioners said they would not fund it. I would like to continue exploring that option with them. CARES funding, I don't think is going to work because you have to have it delivered and in operation by December 31st. The one that they've bid out is 6 weeks out. And so when you look at the schedule, there's just no way. But we've had a lot of funds come available because of the CARES funding we received as reimbursement for our fire and police wages. And one thought that Kalispell and Whitefish, because Columbia Falls just isn't getting the funds because they don't have a paid fire department. One of the things we're talking about is could we purchase a vehicle, maybe it's an ambulance, or maybe we buy a new ambulance and something that we could purchase to assist them during the vaccine rollout, but that would still be a long-term asset of the city and useful and not just sit on the shelf, because that's one of the concerns is, you know, you can buy equipment that's needed right now, but will we ever do mass vaccination during the useful life of the equipment? It's questionable. So I guess as long as I get just kind of some head nods that you'd be interested in me at least exploring that with the health department individuals, that we would support them since the commissioners have failed to do so. I think I could at least move forward with that. So I guess head nods. Okay. All right. And Rebecca, you're good with that too?
Sorry, there was an Amber Alert. I just have a few questions, Dana.
Sure.
So this vaccine rollout, they're actually saying that they're going to take these 2 that have just been announced, and they're within a month they're going to start putting them in humans.
Yeah, so they'll have, so assuming that they get FDA approval, the state is prepared to distribute the vaccines to the health departments. And now they've actually signed on with CVS and Walgreens. And then the hospitals will be actually doing their own vaccination of their own staff is what we're hearing. But yeah, so as long as it gets the FDA approval, it should be distributed. The one of the issues with the new vaccine is the temperature it's kept at. It's like negative 70 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, I don't know. It's a dry ice cold. And so storage is an issue, long-term storage for those. And so the state is procuring that equipment though for the health department is my understanding. So yeah, it'll be quick is what it sounds like. But again, you're not reaching the entire population. You're focused first on high risk individuals and in high risk settings like hospitals.
Okay, and then I guess the other thing I was wondering is why are the vaccinations not being distributed like we did the testing where there's a site and people go there, that kind of thing?
So that's the intent behind this mobile unit is that they would come and set up in Whitefish eventually.
Oh, okay.
Once they've done that's when it comes to the general distribution. Again, though, I think I'd like to talk to them before committing to anything because I want to know, like, could we set aside the Armory building and have that set up for them for X number of days for people to come? Because it's really the same thing. But the county commissioners basically said, yeah, you guys can set up tents. Well, if the vaccines are being implemented in January and February, it's going to be really cold for staff to sit outside. So I think that was what they're looking at. They did say with the mobile unit they were that they got quotes on, they could use for other services in the long term. But it was a very expensive piece of equipment, one that Whitefish really couldn't use afterwards. And because CARES funding won't be available, I think we'd be better off trying to find a piece of equipment that we could repurpose for other city departments later on.
Well, I guess I would be open to seeing what you find out. It just, I don't know, it just seems like really quick to be vaccinating people when it just was announced last week. But okay, might as well find out what we can do, I guess.
And Rebecca, it could be that it gets delayed. Obviously, their first plan was that the first week of November was when this was supposed to be rolling out. So it could easily get delayed, with the FDA approval. But I think once they get that, Pfizer and Biomet, or I don't know if it's that.
It's with an M, I think.
Yeah, Moderna.
Moderna.
Got it. Yeah. So those are just kind of my general update. Oh, yes, Steve.
Are there some other sort of mobile things we could look at other than a vehicle? I mean, I know tents sounds kind of bad, but if you have a tent and you have heaters in it, it's kind of warm enough. I mean, we did Oktoberfest in a tent last year, so
that's true.
Just if there's some other options besides just a vehicle that we could look at, that might be interesting, things that we could use again.
Right. I think that's a good point. And so that's what I wanted to explore with them is, how do we improve an alternate site, say, or, maybe it's just how would you call this, a poster van or something where you can store the vaccines. And because I think the transporting the vaccines is going to take up the most room, especially if they have special cold requirements, temperature requirements. So, but I'll bring back, before we make any purchases, this will come back around. I just wanted to get some support of it so that I could go further into the conversations. So
you have our support.
I guess I have a little concerned about the city being liable to, like, if we're part of rolling out a vaccine that is coming through on an emergency directive and hasn't had the normal length of time to be vetted like they normally are. And then we supply we are part of supplying that. Is there a liability to us if someone, just like a couple of the other ones that came through, there was paralysis was a side effect. That's why they stopped the trials. And so I just think we should think about that a little bit too, like us taking on a medical responsibility when that should be vetted a little bit through the medical community, I think too. But
so Rebecca, just put your concerns at ease. We would be buying equipment for them to use that would also be used for city uses. So it would be like a lease, temporary lease agreement. We would not be providing the vaccines. That's the health department's call. And also it's not a mandatory vaccine, so it is still at the option of individuals.
Right. But a lot can happen.
The city's not going to be vaccinating people either. It's going to be healthcare professionals. We're just helping facilitate it. I don't know how we could possibly be liable for that. If it's FDA approved, it's FDA approved.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, you hope so, but then just watching how the testing got rolled out and all the problems with that, I just think it's some of what has happened has not been our norm, is what I would say. And so it could happen with the vaccines too. I hope not.
Well, Rebecca, it's not for us to decide. That's not for us to decide whether it's been tested appropriately or not. That's beside the point.
Okay.
Let's move on. Dana, anything further?
I did not get an update from Tamalee or Carrie about any recommendations. I will say from their COVID meeting that outside of the vaccine portion, it does sound like they're going to put out some type of press release talking about holidays, gatherings regarding Thanksgiving, and then also asking leaders of the faith to work on their congregations during the holidays. Rabbi Rossin, actually, she's doing a really great thing where she's asking people to pledge for COVID safety, through her interfaith clergy group. She has like 31 of them signed on. That includes more than just their clergy group. She's doing that countywide and put out some information in the news about it. So, I think the health department, it's pretty clear they're not going to take any action. And will not put in any restrictions because they're worried what would occur should they not have support for it. So I think you're going to see more just recommendations from them. That's all I have.
Anything from council related to this standing agenda item?
Mr. Mayor, I'd add a couple of things.
Sure.
I would like to really give a further shout out to Rabbi Rostin. Her idea of trying to bring faith leaders into this process of educating the public and getting the public committed to what we need to do to be able to worship together, to work together, to play together, and to use our businesses is an incredibly, incredibly helpful thing, I think. And I really hats off to her for taking the initiative and just doing it. Just a couple of numbers I will pass on to you, and these were provided to me by our friend Richard Hildner. Apparently, as of the 12th, so we're a little dated, Flathead County had 17,023 active COVID cases. Sioux Falls has approximately 158 active cases. Kalispell, 882 active cases. And Whitefish, 198 active cases. And so this is a problem that is continuing to explode. We have to figure out, I think that the COVID task force and what Dana showed you may in fact be the most effective thing we can do if we can get the damn thing in circulation and we can get people to listen. The problems that we're seeing, I think, are being generated out of what I'll call private gatherings, at least based on what we've heard from the health department. It's not the public settings necessarily that are running these numbers or driving the the community spread. And so I think we need to keep that in mind as we look at what's going on and what we might be able to do. But I think it's very important that we keep this as an agenda item. And I would also propose that we give Dana the authority to, for in effect, cancel our cancellation of the 2nd December meeting if events warrant that we might need to deal with something in this arena. And so I throw that out to you just in terms of what things I'm thinking about and what I think we need to think about as we move forward.
Thanks, Frank. Further comments from the council, Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to echo Frank's comments here. I'd like to add a couple things. We're all feeling very frustrated by the county and their lack of action, and they're actually setting up roadblocks in place to try to actually deal with this thing. And the feeling that I get from people like us, including the Whitefish School Board, is just an absolute exasperation that we know that there's something that could be done, but we are powerless essentially to act. I've been thinking a lot about it. You know, I wear a mask for at least 5 hours a day at school. So you know, this problem is quite literally in my face all day long. And believe me, I probably want this thing to go away more than anyone else, either on the council or in this town, just because I can't, it's difficult wearing a mask all day. And I know that anybody who has to wear one all day echoes my concerns, and my own kids tell me the same thing, and they only go to school 2 days a week. And I don't know if any of you attended or listened to or talked to anybody who went to the school board meeting the middle of last week. But the exasperation was palpable there, and they actually acted on items that were not even on their agenda. So I sent them an email that asked them to reconsider what they had done, that maybe it had been out of order. Because they did, as many of you, as you might know, they did reopen schools for full occupancy 4 days a week for K4, and then starting today, actually. So at Muldown, there were over 700 kids in school over there, and then starting next week will be 5 through 8, and then the following week, right after Thanksgiving, will be 9 through 12, so that by the 30th, the entire school will be at 100% capacity 4 days a week. Wednesdays, they'll still do their opportunity day where none of the students report to school, but teachers all do. And from my understanding, I was not at the meeting, but I've talked to a couple of people who were there. It was out of exasperation and frustration, and feelings of helplessness that what can we do? There's nothing we can do, so we need to get our kids back in school. And I think we feel the same way, at least I do, with respect to our economy, local economy here, is that what can we do if we try to shut down restaurants and bars? We know that that's only going to hurt the people at the bottom. We heard Dave Sheeran say that last week, is that he can weather the storm, but his bartenders and cooks and servers can't weather the storm without any further funding. And so, you know, and we know for sure that the county's not going to help us. The health board is compromised at best right now in terms of being able to do anything. The commissioners are a big part of the problem, and their lack of effort, their lack of understanding, and putting up roadblocks like not allowing overtime pay. County attorney has said he's not going to prosecute anything, and now even the district court has refused to do anything about it. So where does that leave us has been where my thoughts are. And I've been an advocate for trying to do something for several weeks now, for a couple months at least. And I just don't, in considering trying to pass some sort of ordinance, I just don't think it's not worth our time. We can't enforce it. We don't have the staff to do it. And legally, I don't know if it would stand up in a court in Flathead County if somebody challenged it. What I do think we could do is pass a resolution that clearly expresses what we expect from the people that live here and the people that come to visit here until we get through this thing. Because a resolution is an official statement from us saying this is what we'd like to see all of us do as a community and as a group of people that come to visit us. And so I would love to hear I'd like to see if we could consider passing some sort of resolution that takes into account all of the messages that our task force is putting in place to back up what our task force is doing as an official statement from us on city council that says this is what we expect from the people in our town and from the people who come to visit here. So that's what I would like to see, if there's enough support for passing a resolution to do something like that.
Comments from the council?
To speak to the issue before I say anything about that.
Excuse me, Rebecca?
Said at this point, I'm not in favor of just a resolution because I've prepared some other documentation and I'd like to go through some things with you all before I commit to that.
Were you hoping to share that information with the council this evening?
Yes.
Okay. Michelle, did you have that information available?
I do. I'm going to attempt to share it.
Do we need to address Steve's motion? I mean, I think he was asking for discussion about a resolution.
I didn't see anyone signify to speak. So you made the point that you wanted to share some information. So we're going to take that opportunity, and I certainly would entertain comments from the council on Steve's recommendation.
Okay, so it's okay for me to talk now?
And I would just ask that you be as efficient as possible, Rebecca. Just please present new information, not information we're all aware of. And just for the record, Frank, I think you quoted 17,000 cases Flathead County-wide. It's 1,700.
That may be true. I think I may have gotten a typo from our friends.
That's all right. I just order of magnitude different there. So just wanted to make sure people have the right number.
So I prepared some paperwork. Michelle is going to add it to the public record tomorrow. I hope I got everything to her, just because it was getting confusing to me what we'd come through, where we were at, and where we would be going. And so, because I think we're actually in a very dangerous position right now within the county. We had one public comment letter saying, you know, normally this situation would be led by a public health expert. And I think that's why it's been so confusing, is normally the public health experts would be telling us when to shut down, what our occupancies should be, how to mitigate the spread. And a lot of those efforts have been silenced at the county level. And the other problem is that we don't have appropriate enforcement to guide that behavior change. So one of the handouts I've sent to you guys by email recently while we were in the work session was a COVID response timeline. So it just goes through what happened in the initial emergency declaration, what phase 1 involves, what phase 2 involves, and what phase 3 involves, just so that we all know the timeline and what those standards are. The second thing I sent was, let's see, something from the state, and it's an interim report. And this is all going to be available to the public too. But it's an interim analysis of COVID-19 cases in Montana as of 10/30/2020. And it has really good data about how you find out what we're actually dealing with. We know, for instance, that the median age of COVID infection in Flathead County is 42 years of age, and that we primarily are seeing people infected through people that they know, known contacts in households or friends, and in clusters. That would be like a school or a work setting. So only 5% of people are getting it from travel related and 12% in the Flathead. So we've improved quite a bit in terms of community acquired COVID, but what's happening now is that we are giving it to one another. I also included the Biden-Harris COVID-19 plan because he will be entering the White House in January if all the lawsuits work out. And there's quite a few proposals that they will be doing in January. So I thought that was good to see it in terms of what we might be able to implement beforehand in terms of what that administration thinks is appropriate. And then I also included another, just an article about OSHA and possibly federal requirements for employee safety, workplace safety, and then liability for employers is also part of the discussion. And then the last thing, besides the mask mandate, comparison between Governor Bullock's mandate directive and our ordinance, I have that from Angie, is management options. So I actually think that we have more, we can do more if we want to because we are chartered. And so I listed out the tools that are used for controlling the spread of COVID. Normally these would come through the public health department, through the Department of Public Health on the statewide level. They might be coming through the federal government in January, but they are still things that we could implement as a city to try to reduce our numbers before we go into Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday seasons, where everything gets really busy again. So one of them is masking, one of them is occupancy limits, one is seating configurations, hours of operation, types of gatherings allowed, park and trail closures, citywide curfew, closures of specific types of congregate settings, gyms, bars, restaurants, retail shops, churches, schools, grocery stores, sheltering in place, and then testing capacity. Some cities actually do their own testing. They have preserved money and there's a will for that. Contact tracing capacity and enforcement capacity, education outreach, how people are notified when they're actively infected, and then how we use data collection and goals to decide things. So I just felt like we were hearing a lot of anxiety from our citizens for quite a long time. And I, like Steve said at one point, we keep passing the buck. And so I know there are really intelligent people in town that have masters in public health that probably could help us devise some kind of plan to get the numbers down. Almost all the healthcare professionals I know are very tired and really worried. Now they're talking about deaths and body bags and going to funerals, and it's just not a place that I really think we need to be going further into. So I would really like to do more, not less. Like I agree with Steve that a resolution is helpful in letting people know, but at some point we have to act on not having people gather and enforcing masking and making sure that we are doing our part to stop this catastrophe. So that's all. All of this will be part of the public record tomorrow, if I was able to send it correctly to Michelle today. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca, and certainly appreciate the time you put into developing those handouts. I, quite frankly, didn't have time today to go through them in detail, but I certainly will tomorrow.
That too, I wasn't sure how to broach this subject because I hadn't heard from any of you guys about anything. And so I just decided to do it in the way that makes sense for my brain, which is to gather data and then see what normal people in this situation might do and try to see if we could have some actionable item rather than sitting on our hands again.
Any comments from the council? Did anyone get a chance to review the information Rebecca sent out late today? And I did respond and just ask that it be made available to the public as early as possible, which apparently will be tomorrow morning. It'll append the packet.
Yeah, John, I did review it. There's some startling statistics in there, and it's none of it bodes well for the health of people either in Whitefish or in Flathead County. Congregate, I mean, one of the statistics in there was that schools is like one of the highest percentage of congregate areas where people are getting, well, not necessarily where people are getting it, but that's where we're getting a lot of testing from and quarantining from is from schools. Anecdotally, the transmission at schools is questionable at best. And in fact, I've seen other reports that say schools are safer than other places because masks are mandatory. We send kids home, even in Kalispell, if they refuse to wear a mask. And we clean between, every hour. When new kids come in, we clean. All of that said, the numbers aren't going down. It's alarming. It's scary, and people are going to die. The fact that there's so many people at Brendan House now that have this it's not a good thing. In terms of what we can do, we just simply don't have the enforcement tools to do it. We've heard that from Dana. We've heard Chief Dial say they'll do whatever we ask them to do, but is it going to be something that is even enforceable? I mean, we could pass an ordinance that says we're going to fine you $100 if you're not wearing a mask, but who is going to enforce that? We could have a curfew. That might be the easiest thing to enforce. But again, I keep going back to who is going to be hurt by this if the federal government refuses to act and provide resources for people at the bottom. And it's those people at the bottom that are going to suffer. And it's the bartenders and the cooks and the dishwashers that are a huge part of this town that make Whitefish a fun place to come to. So ultimately, we can pass whatever we want, but if we can't enforce it, why are we passing it? And that's been, John, you've said that. I think on that.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
I think we lost Steve.
Yeah.
Could I speak to what Steve just said?
Of course you can.
Okay, so all around the world, people are enacting these safety measures with excellent results. Okay, so us not trying to do everything we can, I think is unacceptable, especially when we have people dying or possibly dying, you know, not to mention the long-term effects of COVID. So I think our community has done a wonderful job of integrating safety protocols that we have asked them to do. You know, the lodging restrictions in April, for instance, masking, really working with their occupancy rates. So I think what we need to do is really look at where we have gaps in safety that we could close. So why don't we close bars early? You know, if we know that young people in their 20s are the major spreaders at this point and they hang out after work together, why don't we try that? You know, or why don't we try a mask fine so that there's some way that a person is reminded that they are also like responsible to the rest of us, not to keep their respiratory output close at hand. I mean, I just feel like you only get a little bit of time to get these things right. Like I was online and someone from Missoula was shocked that we actually let people sit in coffee shops and hang out because they've removed all of their tables. And I think they're down to a 25% occupancy, and they never leave their house without their mouth and their nose covered. So even when they're outside, they are actually always masked, and their contagion levels are much lower than ours. So I think it's worth a discussion to actually look at what we could do between now and the holidays in particular, because we can't change what's going on at the county level. We can't change what's going on federally, but we have some control over what we can create here. And for us to say, oh, we can't do anything, there's no enforcement, which is not really true because we've been doing things all along and people went along with it. And so I think it's okay if we make a mistake and say, oh, we did too much. But is it really okay for us not to try to do something?
Rebecca, just to be clear, I'm not advocating that we don't do anything. I'm advocating that we send an official message that supports what the task force is doing. That's what I'm advocating, because we don't have the enforcement power to enforce any ordinance that we would pass. I think you know that I take this seriously, and I think you know that I am concerned. I'm trying to find something that we can do that is meaningful, that has the most power that we can actually do.
Well, what I would recommend is that we have a work session where we actually go through the mask ordinance and decide if we're going to reenact our own again, and decide if we want to adopt the governor's directives as our own, as a chartered city. So in the event that they are totally eliminated in January with new government people there, we are covered that way. And I think we should go through each of these measures that I wrote down and outlined and see if we could start to work within those safety parameters. Like, why wouldn't we have a fine for someone not wearing a mask? Even if it's not very enforceable, it sends a message that we expect that. And why wouldn't we look at occupancy limits in high-risk situations? You know, or why wouldn't we try a curfew if we know that it might help not spread things late at night? You know, just looking at it and seeing if we could.
Let me politely interrupt here just for a second, Rebecca, to try to keep this moving along, and I appreciate your comments. I'd like to see a showing of hands from the council of who feels we are not doing enough and would like us to do more. Just a simple showing of hands to move this along.
I would like to do more.
Okay.
Do you mean ordinance-wise, John, or?
Anything. Whether it's a resolution, an ordinance, revisiting the mask ordinance, etc.
I think we're not doing enough. We could do more.
Okay, so I see hands from Rebecca, Ryan, Steve, and Frank. Did not from Andy and Ben, which is okay. That's a majority of the council. Would you like to discuss this further in a work session?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yeah, we can discuss it in a work session. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
We don't have any work sessions, so you're going to have to discuss it at a council meeting or a special meeting.
Well, I think what they're referring to is calling a special meeting because, you know, we're 2 weeks out and then we're not meeting again for another month.
Right. Yep. Nope. That makes sense. I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking work session, but special session. Okay.
Yep. I'm sorry. I didn't articulate that, Dana. With that said, council availability, let me first defer to staff. Dana, obviously we would need yourself there. I would like members of the COVID-19 task force present just to get their input and to see how perhaps if and whatever we do come up with can get better integrated into their messaging in our program. Obviously, you know, Chief Dial, Joe Page, et cetera.
I will try to get as many task force members there as possible. Oh, stinking button. But I will make sure that that they're all invited, but I can't guarantee that, you know, I can get the superintendent of schools, North Valley Hospital, and everybody in on one night that you guys pick, because the school's holding a special meeting this week when we have our task force meeting. So I will invite them all though.
Okay. Do you want to?
People. So.
Yeah, I have a thought. We've got another task force meeting on Thursday. I think Thursday evening. It would make some sense to me for us to poll the various members on what they think we could or might be able to do, or what might integrate with what they're otherwise doing that would be helpful. I mean, I think we could ask that question and get their recommendation at that time if we can add that to the agenda. I think that'd be a good way to short circuit that and save their time, as well as get their input sooner rather than later.
So if we did that on Thursday, Frank, I think that's a good idea. We could potentially then push off the special meeting until next week.
I think Andy had a hand up.
I saw that. Andy.
Yeah, and it's my reason for not raising my hand when he said I don't think we're doing enough. I think that, yeah, governments all across the board are not doing that much, and there's a lot more that we could do. But we've just convened the COVID task force. They've just started their work. And I think for us as the council to go in and then start throwing in a bunch of other things without letting them do their work first. And that's why I really welcome Frank's thought that, you know, go to those guys first, see what they think that we can do. I mean, that's what we've charged that task force to do. And so then for us to go out and try and come up with a whole other set of rules, and it just creates what we've got the problem today, mixed messages coming from everywhere without, I mean, it's the one thing in the 460-page playbook that the Obama administration handed off to the Trump administration, constant, consistent messaging. I thought that's what we were going to try and do with the COVID task force. And if we start doing what every other government agency has done, we're going to create the same damn mess. And that bothers me. I think we let those people do their work. I mean, they just started. They just have their first information piece that's going to drop tomorrow. I mean, ultimately, I'm sorry, but I really do agree with Steve is that enforcement is a huge issue and it ultimately comes down to personal behavior. That's what it comes down to. And that we can influence through a constant messaging system. I listened to Here and Now today, and they were talking to a infectious disease doctor in South Dakota, and they have people on their deathbed, and their last words are, "I'm not dying from COVID." I mean, that's the mentality we're fighting out there. And I'm sorry, I don't feel that legislating is going to fix the problem. I really don't. I think it's ultimately going to be personal behavior, and I think we're going to be able to alter that through a good, constant, consistent message coming from the task force. And I would like to see them have the opportunity to do their work. Sorry.
Well,
I don't think you need to feel sorry, Frank or Andy. I think those would be my same thoughts. I mean, we've literally convened this COVID task force 2.5 weeks ago. We've had 2 or 3 meetings, and we haven't even launched the campaign, as you mentioned. I think Frank's idea that we bring these concerns to the COVID task force on Thursday night before calling a special meeting is probably the best move forward.
I would agree.
They don't have the capacity to develop policy, however. It's a community.
Both Frank and I sit on the committee as well as Dana Smith.
Right, I know. But it's
much like every other committee in town, we can message back and be the liaison between the council and the task force. And trust me, we will provide updates back to you.
I think Rebecca might have been getting to the recommendations for what restrictions to put in place. I would say that the health department is coming out within the next day or two, the press release on Thanksgiving. Those are things that the task force will implement, within our messaging that we're doing. Because that's really important. So, I'm happy to ask them, if a resolution from the council is something that would be effective. I think the intent behind the task force is that we're representing what your thoughts are anyways, and the health department's guidance. But yeah, I'm open to whatever you guys want to do, but I'm happy to take it to the Thursday meeting. It does sound like the school district's having a special meeting that night. So I don't know if we'll have the school participation. I haven't gotten confirmation from Dave Means, but I had another individual at the school say they had a meeting at 6. So,
do we have agreement from those that wanted to call a special meeting to allow Frank, Dana, and I to message this back to the committee on Thursday night, and we'll circle back with you rather than calling a meeting this evening? Is that all right with you, Steve and Ryan and Frank?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, Rebecca?
No, it's not okay with me because I don't think we're doing enough. I think it's an emergency, and I understand. I think the messaging is going to be great in the long run, but it's a campaign to talk to people, and we need to have some actionable changes to keep people safe. So, I'm one counselor, but that's why I am the only one that has worked in healthcare for over 3 decades. So I think we're in an emergency, and I think we should be doing more. That's all.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments on this agenda?
If I could I just want to speak to Andy's point. I didn't want to put the cart before the horse in terms of passing a resolution that would confound or disagree or mixed message anything that the task force is doing. My point was more to make sure we have an official statement coming from city council that supports what the task force is messaging.
And John, I agree with.
I think that might have some very good merit, Steve.
Yeah, and I think I would agree too. The other thing, we received a letter today from, I think it's Megan Chasen, who's a science teacher here, very well-reasoned letter about asking us to essentially magnify her voice of concerns that the county is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I would like to see, Dana, if we couldn't get Megan a copy of the letter that we prepared and sent to the county commission and the health board. I think it will give her some comfort that we're trying and that we are trying to amplify her voice. Unfortunately, I think we're getting the same message. I think that letter, when we drafted it and when we put it out, I still think it needs to be made available publicly to Heidi and the Interlake so that they have some sense that, and maybe they'll publish it as a letter to the editor or something else. I think it's important that our constituents, city of Whitefish, and the county as a whole understand that this is a problem we've got to get some movement and a county out of. Otherwise, we're not going to be effective in affecting any of our numbers practically. And so that's another thing I would again throw out there that we probably ought to do to again identify that there are problems here at the county level and we can't rely on them. They're just not responding. The last thing I will say is that I think whatever we would do has got to be consistent with the messaging that we're getting out of the task force, because that's where we've got all the stakeholders. We've got the health department, we've got the schools, we got the hospitals, we got the doctors, we got restaurants. We got all of those represented there so that it's clear that if we're consistent with that, we've got the sign up from everybody. This is a little like Francine's, Roston's proposal to create a task force within the faith community to get everybody signed up. This is about outreach. This is about getting the constituents to take a hold of this thing, because it's not, what we've seen is legislation at the state level or the federal level has just not been effective in driving the numbers the way we want them. So I think we've got to change a losing game, if you want to call it that. And that's why I think this approach is probably a little better.
Further comments from the council?
May I ask an open question? Is my understanding that the task force, we will be asking them for policy recommendations, not so much messaging recommendations?
That's my understanding, Ben, at least having the discussion.
Yeah. My hope is that what we'll be able to get is ask them directly, is there anything you think we can do as Whitefish from a policy perspective or resolution that would be helpful overall driving these numbers?
Yeah.
And so that's my intent.
Okay. And just to put my 2 cents in, I mean, I do, I agree with what Andy said. It just feels like all levels of government aren't doing enough here. And I look at this list of options that we have, and as was mentioned earlier, I'm just feeling somewhat defeated and it's very hard for me to understand 6 foot apart, 10 foot apart, 6 people at table, 10 people at table. What does any of this do? How do we solve the problem? And I think some expert advice would help me anyway. I think if there was any way that we could get a sense that any of this would actually be effective, I'd be all for it. It's just a matter of how to get there. And I think if we can get some help from the task force, great.
Yeah, I'm hopeful Tamale or Carrie will be able to attend. We did not get the health department to attend last week because they were interviewing for a new health officer. So there could be pretty big changes coming within the next couple of weeks too with the different health officer. There could be a, just a different approach. Maybe they're willing to go and put out a health order without the commissioners or the health board approval. So we'll just have to see.
Great. Well, thanks for the discussion tonight. We'll circle back with the council after Thursday's meeting. We're going to start with councilor comments, and I'll just go down the list. Andy, anything to share this evening?
Just one brief thing. I just would like to have a little moment of thought for Mike Wasden, who passed away on Friday. And Mike served on this council, served admirably. I had an opportunity to serve with him and always appreciated his input and his insight. As we were looking at the trail things tonight, he was fundamental in a lot of the early fundraising for the trail, and there's just countless other things that he'd done as a civic-minded individual and long time member of the Whitefish community, and I just would like to remember him and put everything else I can for good feelings out there to his family.
Indeed. I hadn't heard that. Ben, anything this evening?
Yeah, I would just make one quick comment on the resort tax discussion that we had earlier. I think it's pretty cool, this meeting that we had, several, groups coming forth with various proposals about things in our community that really help build our community. And I know, I think helping to fund the Whitefish Trail system, I think is a good idea. I want to speak in support of that. I think that the trail system is become a really valuable community asset for all of us and for our visitors as well. And I almost wonder if it's enough, and if we are showing enough support for the trail system. And I know that they've got proposals to expand it and other things that take resources. And I just throw the question out there: is it enough for the trail system? So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Frank, anything this evening?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Frank. Rebecca.
Another thing, I think if you're going to have the task force develop policy, it would be really nice if the professionals that are trained in that, they have like masters in public health. If someone on that task force has that background, then I think that would be very helpful. But if nobody does, then I think at some point maybe we could even hire our own person to help us with this type of planning, because those people know how to get us out of this mess. But the rest of us only come from our own perspectives. And we really need professional help with this. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Ryan.
Nothing further from me this evening.
Thanks, Ryan. Steve.
Thanks, John. I just want to say a couple words about another person who passed away in our community this last week, Rob O'Neill. When I ran for this council, he's the kind of person that I would consider that I represented. Same age as me, moved here. He moved here before I did, but he was a guy who was just a working class guy who came to Whitefish because he wanted to be in a place where he could ski, be outdoors, and live in a small town that was quirky and fun and weird and all those things. He painted my house this summer, actually, right in August. And he always asked me every day, what's going on council? So wasn't necessarily engaged in the public process, but he always wanted to know what we were doing. And he was always inquisitive and just a bright spot in this community. Probably everybody knew him. And he passed away last week, so I just wanted to mention that. And it's, we lost another good member of our community when he passed away.
Yeah.
I'll chime in there, Steve. Thanks for bringing that up. I've known Rob for 25 years, and to know his extended circle of friends, both here and back in New England, the showing of support this weekend at his service was just absolutely remarkable. He was an incredible father, husband, brother, son, just a stand-up guy, and he's going to be missed by so many people, around the country, in particular in Whitefish here. And my thoughts go out to his closest friends, and of course to Christy, his wife, his son Mason, his sister Holly, and his extended circle of friends, and of course his mother Marcia. So thanks for bringing that up, and my thoughts go out to his family and friends tonight as well. With that said, Dana, additional direction on the resort tax reauthorization. I assume it's a little gray right now. Do you need some additional direction? I guess I'll just chime in real quickly. I would like to at least explore what some language would be to include not just park land acquisition, but open space. And go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, so one thing to think about with open space is, you know, you're looking to probably do conservation easements, which is fine, but you know, the cost there for a percentage to actually build up enough, it's going to be difficult. One of the things that we need to consider is if we ever decide we want to bond the resort tax like we did with Haskell Basin. Now that had a secondary backup with the water. I don't think that it's unheard of to bond only a resort tax, but I think you would have to have a percentage shown for open space alone and not have these other items under the parks and paths as a percentage. So if that's the case and we are looking at conservation and open space, knowing that you're likely going to have to bond for it because you're not going to have enough cash on hand to make a purchase with say 2% or 1%. I guess that would be my recommendation as we look at adding it as a separate section. Otherwise, you're going back to voters when you have to bond, and I guess you can run that risk, but I just don't see $100,000, you know, 2% is $100,000 a year of the 3%. So, you know, to get enough to do a conservation easement, you're going to be pushing that. It'll be a while, I guess, to have enough in reserves.
Yeah, my concern with adding an additional section is complicating the ballot language. And I think, Andy, you told me this years and years ago when we were going to the 3% with Haskell Basin, that there have been multiple attempts prior to Haskell to get us to 3% for other initiatives that all failed. But it was a very simple, concise message that sold that an 84% approval rating. And my concern with adding another section for open space or conservation would do just that. It would complicate the ballot measure and take away from the other elements of the resort tax. I also think that when you look at what we've accomplished as a community without an open space bond or an open space measure, given the fabric of conservation we have between state land, federal land, private forestry lands, and just private lands in general, it's pretty damn remarkable. And I would hope that that trend's going to continue. So if that's the direction I'm hearing from Dana, then that's staff and council's recommendation that we don't complicate the ballot. I'd rather not risk losing the resort tax by adding an additional item, which would be for open space and conservation. That's my personal opinion, but I'd be interested in other thoughts. Andy.
Yeah, I just brought it up because it came up at our WLI executive committee meeting, and it's not something that I'm willing to die on the hill for by any means. And I do agree, and I think Doug was right on the money. It's like if we do add other things in, if we put too much of a laundry list down there, it does complicate it, and I think it makes it more difficult. And I'm pretty comfortable that with the acquisition language in the park side of it, we could probably make fly what we would probably need to make fly. And Dana's exactly right, is it would be something that you would be accumulating money for over time. It's not something you're going to run out and buy a piece of property with tomorrow, given what property values are around here. And so, you know, I'm more than happy with just leaving the acquisition language in the park side of it. And I think that that's fine. So.
Okay. Other thoughts from the council?
My only thought about the resort tax is that the majority of those dollars should be things that everybody uses, people that live here, people that visit here, because the money is collected from everyone. And if we dog ear it for things that really only affect the people that live in Whitefish. I'm not sure how fair that is. So that's just I'd like to see us make sure we prioritize things that everybody uses, if that money is coming from everybody.
Good point. Further comments? I guess next steps, Dana, and correct me if I'm off base here, would be obviously we need to get the Resort Tax Monitoring Committee's eyes on this this week. Additional council, input, I think at some point before we hold the public hearing, but I agree with you 100% that our intent was to draft ballot language that could then be posted for a public hearing so people actually have something to comment on.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I think we'll hear what the committee has to say again. Just looking at the time frame, I would say probably we're looking at January for. I think January would give you a good time for the public hearing. I worry as we enter the holidays, even the December 7th would be pushing it. So, and that's actually a pretty long agenda. So I would say, if we get this on the council's agenda for January sometime for a public hearing, that'll give us time for you guys to mull it over again. I guess based on the comments I've heard tonight, do we need to have another work session, or should we just take this as a draft, not necessarily the ballot language, but just say, here's the proposed uses, and just do a public hearing that way? Because then when we do the ballot language with the resolution, that's actually another public hearing. So we'll have multiple.
I'm fine with that unless the council feels differently. I don't think we need to hold another work session on it.
Okay.
Is that okay with the council, just showing of hands? Andy? Good with that? Okay. Great, Dana.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I had anything further. So with that, Dana, anything else from staff?
Nope.
Council, anything last minute, last comments? Going once, twice. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to leave.